This is People Are the Worst, the show where leadership meets reality, because navigating people and people problems isn't just part of the job, it is the job. Join us today as we tackle the messy, the maddening, and the downright ridiculous, and explore how to lead through it all with clarity, courage, and maybe some caffeine. I'm Lucy.
And I'm Lindsey. And today we're picking up where we left off in our series on leadership intelligence and the 5 core skills needed to develop it. In the last episode, we kicked off our conversation on skill 4, making decisions at a high velocity. We covered how to decide whether you should even be the one making a decision, how to think about scope and reversibility, and we worked through questions on prioritization, strategic thinking, performance management, and handling new mandates when no one on the team has done the work before. If you missed that episode, we highly recommend going back and listening.
Today is part 2 of that conversation. And this is the half that trips people up the most, because even when you have the frameworks and you know the process, decisions still go sideways. Why? For 2 reasons. 1, your brain is quietly sabotaging you with biases that you can't see. And 2, you lack the confidence to pull the trigger. And that's something that we come up against all the time with the work that we do at Elevate. People really knowing how to do it, but not having that confidence piece.
So true. So in this episode, we're going to talk about the failure modes of decision-making, the exact biases that trip us up, what to do when imposter syndrome kicks in, right at the moment you need to decide something hard, and how all of this shows up in the toughest decisions of all, performance management. Research from Oracle found that 85% of business leaders report decision distress in the past year. That's regret, guilt, or doubt about a decision they made. And as we mentioned before, research from NerdWallet found that 78% of business leaders have experienced imposter syndrome. So if you're sitting there second guessing your last decision, you are very much not alone. So let's get into the first question. Evelina asks, I manage someone who overthinks everything. The simplest task becomes overblown because of all the what ifs. How do I help them make decisions faster without crushing their thoughtfulness?
That's a nice question. A nice name as well.
Yes.
Nice name. Yeah. Okay, so overthinking is usually not a thinking problem. It's a fear problem. When someone spirals on the what ifs, what they're really doing is trying to protect themselves from being wrong, looking stupid, or failing publicly in some way, which is super scary. So before you try and fix their process, you need to understand what they're actually afraid of. And then that can really help. So you want to start with a conversation that names that pattern that you're seeing. And often there will be some kind of pattern that you're noticing in their behavior. And I would suggest starting with something like, and in her case here, we've got someone who kind of overthinks everything. Although she's very thoughtful, or the direct report is very thoughtful. And it becomes very overblown. So I might start with something like, I noticed that there have been a number of smaller decisions recently that have taken a lot of energy from you. And I know that you're an incredibly thoughtful person. So I'm wondering what's coming up for you when you're working through them, or something like that. And then actually listen to what they have to say. And you'll often hear some sort of forms of, I'm worried I'll make the wrong call, or I don't want to get it wrong in front of the rest of the team, things like that, where you can start to uncover what they're really worried about. Then once you understand that fear, you can do 2 things. Firstly, is explicitly give them that permission to fail. And I mean explicitly. So you're actually saying the words, if you try this and it doesn't work, that's okay. I'd rather you moved quickly and be wrong sometimes than move very slowly and be right every single time. So you're giving them that explicit permission. Now, that sounds obvious, but most managers never actually say that bit out loud. So there are people, the direct reports on the team will naturally just assume the opposite. So secondly, then that's the first thing, be explicit. Second is teach them the concept of something called decision reversibility. So not every decision deserves the same amount of thought and time or mental cycles or stress, right? A reversible decision like trying a new meeting format or testing a small process change should get minutes of thought, not hours. And that's because it's a more reversible decision. An irreversible decision, or something that's more irreversible at least, is something more like hiring or firing or launching something to customers. And that deserves a bit more care and thought. So help them sort of sort through their decisions into those two buckets, so they stop spending 90% of their energy on the 10% of decisions that don't actually matter.
I love that frame. I'd also add one more thing. I found that sometimes overthinkers actually do have great instincts. They just don't trust those instincts. So when they come to you with these three options and they're agonizing, try just asking, if I made you pick one right now, what would you do? And their answer is almost always the right one. You're just helping them hear themselves and act on what they know.
Yes, absolutely. Sometimes just sort of trusting. Not everyone's gut is right, but sometimes it is, because your gut is simply just it's just a pattern, right? Your gut comes from your experience, patterns that you've seen, people's behaviors that you've witnessed. It doesn't come from thin air. We kind of call it our gut, but it's actually quite informed with data a lot of the time.
Yep.
Okay, next question. So this is from Keith. And Keith asks, I'm a new manager and I find it hard to decide when to give and when not to give feedback. Classic. Any tips on helping me feel less insecure about giving feedback to my direct report? I worry that they might take it less well or be less motivated as a result.
Love it. Managing is not easy. This is a great example of a micro decision that managers have to make day to day, right? Like trying to understand where your direct report is, what they've got going on. But the reality is that these sorts of decisions, while they might feel small, when you add it all up, like this really is what separates strong managers from average ones. And what I have found is that most leaders don't give enough feedback. Whenever I run a 360 for leaders, I always find that their direct reports want more feedback. And while it might sound counterintuitive, feedback given well will really increase the trust between you and your direct report, because feedback helps people know where they stand and how they're doing. And this is reassuring. It also shows that you care about them and their success. And Keith, I would say to help you feel more confident giving the feedback, take some time to prepare it and actually practice saying it out loud. Also, one tip is make sure your intent is clear when you give the feedback, so they know it's coming from a good place. They know you care. And you could say something like, I really want to see you be successful here. I've got some feedback I want to share because I think it'll help you get better at X. Another tip is it's also great to just ask them if they're up for hearing it. Like make sure they opt in. You might just say like, is now a good time, right? And then you know. And also make sure you give a lot of positive feedback, just not at the same time, because the shit sandwich is not effective.
And for those of you who don't know what a shit sandwich is when you put positive feedback, constructive feedback, positive feedback. So you sandwich the negative or constructive feedback, if you will, in between two positive feedback statements. And we often do this because we want to alleviate our guilt. And it's just a sloppy way of giving feedback. It means that the person doesn't really internalize the constructive feedback because they've kind of heard the two positive bits either side. It also wastes a really good praise. Like if you've bothered to think through two great things that you want to tell them, and then you go waste them and diminish them by sticking a piece of constructive feedback in the middle, you've just lost all round. Just be confident and clear about the feedback that you have for them. Let that sit. Let that be the topic of the conversation, and save the positive stuff for another time.
Yeah. The shit sandwich is really just a massive waste of time.
Yeah. All it helps is you as the giver.
Right. It's totally do. Yeah. It's selfish. Yeah. Really.
It's like a selfish way of giving feedback.
Yeah.
And I think, Keith, here's the other thing about confidence, which I think is what your question is centering around. It doesn't come before action. You know, it comes from doing the action, and you're not going to feel confident about giving feedback until you've given feedback a bunch of times. And so the only way is really the only way to get better is to just keep doing it, keep trying it, give the feedback, notice that it doesn't destroy the relationship that you have with your direct report, and your confidence will just build from there as you feel better about your ability to give feedback well.
Yes, the only way out is through.
Yep.
All right, we've got another question. So Priya asks, I keep having the same coaching conversation with one of my direct reports. She takes the feedback, improves for a week or two, then falls right back into that same pattern. I'm starting to wonder if I should give up, but I also don't want to give up too soon. How do I know? Oh, we've all been there.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts, Liz?
Well, this is a really common pattern where you're like continuously giving the same feedback and hoping to get different results, and then you are left wondering, like, shall I give up? Like, what is the point here? I'm just exhausting myself. So Priya, if you're asking whether to give up on someone, you've probably already been in the loop too long with this. And I know that's hard to hear, but the pattern you're describing, feedback, improvement, regression, feedback, improvement, regression, is one most managers hold on to way past the point where it's serving anyone, including the person that you're really trying to help. But before you decide to give up, I want you to check for a specific failure mode called the sunk cost bias. Now, you've invested weeks, maybe months into this person. Your brain is telling you that quitting now means that all that investment was wasted. And that's not true. The investment was not wasted. It gave you the data that you needed to see the pattern. The question is not, have I invested too much to stop? But is future investment likely to produce a different result? That is a big difference between those two statements. So here's a decision-making framework for making this call. You want to ask yourself 3 questions, okay? 3 questions. 1, is the gap between what she's doing and what the role requires a skill gap or a will gap? Right? A skill gap means she wants to do it, but she doesn't know how. And that's actually quite coachable. Like, that's doable if you have the time. A will gap means she knows how, but is not motivated to. And that's much harder and it often signals a complete sort of mismatch with the role itself. So that's the first question. Is it skill or is it will? Part 2, question number 2 is, have I been clear about what specifically needs to change and what the consequences are if it doesn't? And if you've been giving feedback but haven't explicitly said this needs to change by X date, or we'll need to talk about your role, you haven't actually set the terms of that decision yet. And that's really important for people to hear. So sometimes it's a you thing. And 3, what is the next question, third question is, what is the impact on the rest of the team? And this is the question that managers skip. When one person consistently underperforms and everyone else sees you tolerating it, and we've said this before, your top performers start questioning whether the standards matter at all. This is very demotivating for your top performers, and it's really expensive.
That's so true. Lucy, this is reminding me of a story as I think about this skill versus will, right? So,
love your stories.
It just came back to me. I had this direct report. I can picture where we had the conversation and everything. So he super talented, you knew he was so bright and so capable, and yet he would not do the little things well that I needed him to do. And, I could tell, I knew it wasn't a skill thing, even though in some ways there was a performance issue. But what I knew though was it was more of a will issue. And I think, he was almost like he was just being lazy. And I think it was just because he was bored. And so I finally just sat down and was like, we got to talk. Let's hash this out. And I'm like, it's obvious to me that you're bored, and that you need something bigger. And so I am willing to take a massive risk on you, but I need you to be all in. I'm willing to give you. So I basically I gave him a bigger job, which is kind of crazy.
Well, counterintuitive.
Almost promoted him to a bigger job, even though he actually was sort of, by some standards, underperforming in the current role.
Yeah.
because it was kind of like you're up or you're out in a way. And so I was like, listen, do you want to go open this new market for us? Like, this is a big job, this is high profile, but like, I know, because these were the skills that he really had. And that what he loved doing was like anything new, right? He would not maintain things. And it meant that he would have to go to Southern California. We were in Northern California at the time. He'd have to go to Southern California once a week. And anyway, he said yes. And he was so energized. It was like a new person. And he actually did all of like the process stuff that I could not get him to do. He actually even created processes. Like, it was amazing. So I would say like, the answer isn't always termination, right? Like, sometimes the right call is changing the role. And often I think if a person is genuinely struggling in their current seat, but would thrive somewhere else in the team before you let them go, before you go and have that conversation, I would ask yourself, like, is there somewhere else that would really play to their strengths and somewhere they'd really exceed, where they would be super excited and you could, you'd get the best out of them? And if yes, then I would have that conversation and I would be really candid, right? So you're not, they're clear that actually like they've been underperforming in the current role, but you think it's actually a will thing, not a skill thing. And so, you're going to give them this opportunity, and you just so that you're really on the same page, right?
Yeah, I love that, because you made a decision in that moment to go with a gut instinct you had that meant that you had to make a really clear decision, which was actually a pretty big decision, because it was, instead of firing this person or let him keep bumbling along where he was, to actually give him a much bigger role instead, because your hunch was that he would actually really perform well in that role. So I think that's a good example of what we were speaking about earlier today.
Totally. Sometimes it's quite uncomfortable, right? Because it wasn't lost on other people that like, he wasn't the best at things, right? So it was a big risk, but I knew, I was like, he was just one of those guys that you get him if you get him excited about something, he's really, really good. But if he's not, he's just not going to bother. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this next question seems to have had the opposite effect of what happened in your example. Marcus asks, I made a big call last quarter and that turned out to be wrong. And now I'm second guessing every decision I make. How do I get my confidence back without just pretending the mistake didn't happen? Oh, Marcus, I'm so sorry.
I know. So Marcus, first, I want to normalize something. Every single good leader I know has a call that turned out to be wrong. I have had several. Everyone. And the difference between the ones who grow from it and the ones who spiral is really what they do next. And the trap you're in right now is called confirmation bias. Your brain has fixated on that one wrong decision and is using it as the reference point for every future decision. That's why you're second guessing everything. You're asking, what if I'm wrong again? Before you've even considered whether the situation is similar at all. So here's how I want you to get out of this, right? Let's unstick this. Step one is do a real postmortem on the decision without the emotion. Write down what you knew at the time, what you decided, and why. Then write down what you know now. And the question is not, was the outcome bad? But given what I knew at the time, was the decision reasonable? Sometimes the answer is yes, the decision was sound and the world just moved in a totally unexpected way that no one could have forecasted. And sometimes the answer is no, there were signals I missed. And there are two different lessons you can take from that. So first, that's step number one, right? Like just get down the facts. Pull out the emotion, get down the facts. Step two, separate the identity from the action. I made a bad decision is a fact. I am a bad decision maker is a story. The second one is what's eating at your confidence. Catch yourself when you slip from that first to the second. And step three, make small decisions fast on purpose. Confidence is a muscle, and right now yours is atrophied. So find those low stakes decisions you can make quickly this week and make them. It sounds silly, but it works because you're proving to yourself that you can still move, that you can make great decisions.
Yes. Just because you've made that one doesn't mean that you're a bad decision maker.
Absolutely not.
That's a label as well as a story that you're giving yourself. And Marcus, I'd also just add, ask yourself this question that I do love to use with my coaching clients. How would a confident version of me respond to this situation? Or what would I tell a close friend or a colleague to do if they were in my shoes? And that little bit of distance from yourself, it's a distancing technique, technically, often unlocks something. We're all much kinder and more rational when we're advising other people than when we're stuck inside our own heads, like gnawing on a decision that we've made.
Yeah. And just to continue to normalize this for you, this reminds me of a call I was on last week with a very prominent CEO. I won't share his name, but he was telling me how he wished people would just own their mistakes. Like in his words, he was like, I just want to hear people say, I fucked up. Sometimes you fuck up. He's like, I fuck up. So he was like, I don't want people to dilute it with, here's what we learned. He's like, I just want people to feel comfortable saying they fucked up. It happens. And this was a great reminder too, that if you're a more senior leader, this is a golden opportunity for you to demonstrate owning that mistake. Like make time to talk about it, own it, tell people what you learned from it. It really will help with the psychological safety and just authenticity and building trust on your team. I mean, just imagine one of your senior leaders just owning it and being like, you know what? Just want to let you all know I fucked up this week.
Yeah. And it's so freeing. It's so freeing. When you can just be like, that was a travesty.
Yes. Yeah.
And you feel so much better because you've like said it. Everyone hears it. It's like, yeah, my bad.
Yeah. And then you're moving on,
Exactly.
So, yeah. Research from Oracle found that 85% of business leaders report decision fatigue in the past year. That's regret, guilt, or doubt about a decision they made. And as we mentioned before, research from NerdWallet found that 78% of business leaders have experienced imposter syndrome. So if you're sitting there second guessing your last decision, you are very much not alone. If you want to unpack what we've discussed further, let's connect on LinkedIn. Our link to our LinkedIn account is in the show notes, and you can learn more about how we support people leaders at elevateleadership.com, or feel free to email us at dear L and L. That's dear, the letter L and L at elevateleadership.com. Catch you next time on People Are the Worst.